Hey folks, back again with ancient cosmography, and well, first I'll just show this is something from my grandpa, James Bernard Campbell, my mom's dad. 6'4", University of Alabama, University of Tennessee, MA. 9 years as elementary principal, 2 years as teacher of high school history, 5 years as teacher of college history. So, he might have been some of the influence in turning me towards history. Author of Developing Loyal Citizens, American Education Week Handbook, 1942. So this is when I think my grandparents were really true believers in the U.S. role in World War II to a large extent, and probably didn't realize how much of a psyop the whole thing was, but what can you do? Reconstruction in East Tennessee during the federal occupation, East Tennessee during the radical regime. And we're basically descended from the radicals of East Tennessee. The radical Republicans, the radical Unionists, Lincolnites, or whatever. Twice winner of the McClung Award in Southern History, 1947, 1948, member Phi Delta Kappa, Phi Alpha Theta, Phi Sigma Alpha, and Theta Chi. Chaired groups sponsoring lecture forums in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and Peoria, Illinois. Church positions held: member of Board of Trustees, Chairman of Board of Trustees, Superintendent of Religious Education, Chairman of the Department of Adult Education, served as freshman counselor at Bradley University for 3 years. Taught the following courses at Bradley University: Europe since 1500, U.S. History and Government, Introduction to American Government, the Old South and the Civil War, the Colonial Period, graduate level, Principles of American Democracy, Latin America. Have given numerous lectures before church and civic groups on historical and current topics. Enlisted as private in U.S. Army Air Forces, 1943, or I don't know what that. Separated in 1946 as first lieutenant. All ratings as officer were excellent or superior. Helped set up college training detachment program for Southeast Training Command. Received several written commendations from my commanding officer. So anyway, and then these are some certifications he has. I'm not sure what it says. So that's just to show that I'm following in a line of historians, I guess, or at least from him. And he has been a big inspiration for me as a radical and as a historian. But anyway, I'm studying Djarman Makoduin, which seems to represent Australia and Papua. But, this is a I think that Japan was depicted as a rabbit by the Egyptians in the Book of Two Ways of Jehudi Hotep, I believe. And so basically the rabbit's head is is this. This is the rabbit ears is Shikoku, and the rabbit head is Kyushu. And it actually has like a pretty well defined eye. There's like the mouth here and the tip of the nose here, whatever, and then an eye right here, which is not sure what exactly that is, but it's pretty well defined geological thing. So I thought that's interesting how many of them actually do have well-defined eyes and other like specific anatomy. And I was Googling to see if there are Japanese stories about a rabbit or a hare or something. So there is this story about this hare that's in the water that could relate to the same avatar. And it seems that in this story, part of the story is the hare starts to cry. So I was thinking that is possible, that could match for this avatar, this conception of Japan, because there's these islands, down here that could be seen to be tears coming out of his eye. And so here's that eye right there, and then here's like a tear coming out. And I would think potentially you could say this peninsula and these islands here are also the tears coming out. That would explain all this. And then this would just be the bottom lip, and then this would be the upper jaw. And there's also some other islands around that might also be explained that way. And let's see. So in terms of the Diarmid versus the boar avatar, let's see. Here's another thing showing, the snout of the boar being Cape York, and here's the Warrior Reef, which seems to be the death of Diarmid of Papua, and is considered to be one of Australia's quills, one of his bristles, the kind of stiff bristles on the top of a boar's head. And he had earlier thrown a spear at the boar, which shivered into three, or was said it was broken into three when it hit the boar, and it bounced off. And so this seems to be that, like it's right here. The Wessel Islands here, and here shows that they are actually three islands that make up this spear-looking part right here. And then he pulls a sword from a scabbard, which seems to be this as the sword and this as the scabbard, and then kills the boar with it. So this peninsula and maybe this one could be the sword actually being plunged into the boar. So there's that. Maybe make it larger here. So yeah. Top of the boar's snout, the bottom of the boar's snout, and I think this is the boar's tusk. And these are Ragala Island, Gulawuru Island, and Wessel Marchimbar Island, which make up the three sections. The spear, and then there you can see the sword, short sword, and its sheath. And I think all this sediment and all these estuaries likely represent Papua, like bleeding out from this injury from Warrior Reef. So yeah, you can see how close Warrior Reef is. And you could really say that the Warrior Reef in some ways starts right here, like that this sequence of reefs goes from like this little speck right here to these to there, and then basically all the way to Papua's mainland. So it makes perfect sense, why it would be seen as killing Papua, especially since Papua seems to be bleeding out right here with all this sediment and these estuaries. But also that it has to be the focus of the story, because these stories are meant to help navigate people through these straits. And so this is really important, because this is probably the most dangerous part of Torres Strait here, since there's also these islands here, but at least you can see them probably better than you could see a reef, a reef being just at the surface or just below the surface of the water. So Bruce, I'm reading this, Bruce Chatwin's song lines, and he basically agrees with my theory. I mean, I guess this is from, his book is from 1987, but in it, he has the same theory as me, that basically the song lines represent ancient, that this type of system was probably universal in antiquity. So here he says, I leaned back against a tree trunk and leafed through Ovid's Metamorphoses. The story of Lycaon's transformation into a wolf took me back to a blustery spring day in Arcadia, and seeing in the limestone cap of Mount Lycaon itself an image of the crouching beast king. So this might mean, because he's in Australia, and he's seen how these song lines that are used to navigate across the outback actually are based on the shapes of the landscape. So he saw like a shape where it looked like this lizard or something, and he could see the anatomy of it on the landscape that matched up with the song lines, with the dreaming tracks, with the mythological spell songs. And so he's basically saying the same thing about Mount Lycaon, that it has, in the limestone cap of it, it actually does have a shape that explains the story. The image of the crouching beast king. I read of Hyacinth and Adonis, of Deucalion and the flood, and how the living things were created from the warm Nilotic ooze. So that's from the Nile. And it struck me from what I now knew of the song lines that the whole of classical mythology might represent the relics of a gigantic song map, that all the toings and froings of gods and goddesses, the caves and sacred springs, the sphinxes and chimeras, and all the men and women who became nightingales or ravens, echoes or narcissi, stones or stars, could all be interpreted in terms of totemic geography. So I agree. I mean, I think some of it is also astronomy, and often the astronomy is merged with the geography. But I think it's awesome that, because his book on this is still the most widely read, most famous book about songlines. So the fact that he came to the same conclusion as myself, that these represent basically the template of all ancient mythology, or at least of a lot of it, is encouraging to me. Let's see, get some of these out of the way. Let's see, so this is like after, I might have already shown this, but this is like after Diarmid Papua dies from Warrior Reef, and then Finn McCool, who was the one who tricked him into getting killed because he was jealous of him. Then he went, people told him, you should save him with your life-saving water from your hands. And so, anyway, water drunk from Fion's hands had the power of healing, but when Fion gathered water, he twice let it run through his fingers before he could bring it to Diarmid. Threatened by his son Oisin and grandson Oscar, he fetched water a third time, but this time he was too late. Diarmid had died. So I'm guessing that these are the three instances. The first two, when he lets the water run through his fingers on purpose just to troll Diarmid while he's dying, are these two. That, these little bits and maybe these bits and stuff are the water coming out, and for here, all of these bits are the water coming out. And then this one here would be like a hand and maybe another hand cupping it, holding the water in. And then there's less water coming out of this one. So this one is when he's actually going to give it to him, but then he's dead. But I think it could be a double entendre, because I think that with this avatar, this is the avatar of Finn's hand if Diarmid is dead, but if Diarmid is alive, then I think this is part of Diarmid's nose. So that's the double meaning of that, I suspect. So this is a close-up of that, what seems to be the last instance of Finn carrying water in his hands, cupping water in his hands to feed to Diarmid, and this is Diarmid's nose right here. But this is kind of more like a skeleton nose because he's dead. That's what I'm thinking it means. Because when he's alive, he has the fleshy part of his nose too, but when you die, that part goes away and you just have the skeleton, just the bridge of the nose or whatever. So yeah. So that's just the same text, and then this is Diarmid's head, and then these. So this was another possibility that I was thinking, that it could be these three, but a reason that I suspect it's this is that in a lot of photos this looks a lot more separated from here than it does here. Like here, you can barely see it separated. But I've seen some other satellite images where it looks very clearly separated. And since this is much further afield, that decreases its likelihood of being part of this avatar, because, it's talking about feeding something to Diarmid. So it has to be something right near Diarmid's mouth. And so that matches to this, that matches to this, and that matches to that. Here's the warrior reef that kills Papua. Here's Papua bleeding out from these estuaries here, being stabbed by the poison quill of the great boar, Australia. And you know, there's the poison quill, there's the estuaries here. Yeah, it says he pierces him on his sole, S-O-L-E, which means his underside. You know, it's an archaicism. And it says he, you know, that the dangerous quills were on the top of the snout of the boar, basically. So this is the top of the snout, this whole area, basically. So it's the Great Barrier Reef. And there's the tusk there. And this might be the lower jaw, like the chin and lower lip of the boar. Maybe the ears here or there or something. See, this was something right off the coast of Iceland that I was thinking could be the bronze vessel, or maybe another iteration of the bronze vessel of Celtic lore. Even though I thought I had found a maybe even better match of the bronze vessel with the jumping carp jumping out of it, like this could be the carp. But there seemed to be maybe a better match in the Faroe Islands, but maybe it's both. Maybe they have multiple iterations. See, this is just close up on here, so I'm not sure if this relates. Like maybe this could be an avatar of Finn McCool, but who knows? It's not necessary. But yeah, here's these hands and probably that hand. If that's an avatar of Finn McCool, it could be that this is his thumb and that this is his face, his chin, his nose, and that he's going to suck his thumb just like in his British, Scottish avatar as the Isle of Skye with the small isles, and so as his fist and thumb.